Hey, everybody, and welcome back to part two in our series on the introduction to Lightning Web Components. Today, we are going to talk about events. I think one of the coolest topics in front-end development. If you haven't already, please take a second and hit like and subscribe. Definitely helps me out. And, my son reminds me that if I don't ask you to do that in the first 5 seconds, it won't happen. So after you've done that, and thank you, we are going to talk about events now. And events are just they're things that happen in the browser, right? It's all the things that give interactivity to our users. So mouse over, mouse out, click, keyboard events. These are all different types of events. They're essential to any sort of front-end development. Otherwise, things aren't very interesting. And, when a user clicks a button, they expect something to happen. And that's how we work with our events. So first, let's just switch over and take a look at our documents real quickly. So if you are, first place I always say to stop and take a look at is your MDM web docs and take a look at, so here we have the click event. An element receives a click when a pointing device, right, is clicked. And then we can tell, so when that click happens, the browser says, hey, you told me to listen for that click event. And now we're going to run this JavaScript to do this thing because of the event. So today we're actually going to talk about click events and on change events and how we handle those in a Lightning Web Component. Obviously, I'm going to throw, hey, stop and take a look at your Salesforce Developer Guide and what they have to say about events inside the Lightning framework, Lightning Component. Web component framework, because it can be you're going to see it's a little bit different than maybe some of the other types of web development you've done. And last, all right, we have got our local development server up and running. If I got anything in my console right now, I'm going to get rid of it. And that way we can get things kind of running and see them as we develop them. So here's what we're going to try to do. We are going to, in our Lightning Web Component, we are going to create an input field where a user can type text. And all we want to do when they type text is see basically in real time that text is going to then display in an output field on our component. So let's say, I think, first, let's create that output field. What am I doing? Div. And I'm going to give it I'm just going to put a little space around it. And I'm using standard Lightning design system, and that just I don't have to go into my CSS right now and define a margin and a selector. I can just do it like this. All right, and inside our div, I'm going to do a span, an inline element, and I'm going to say the input from the user is colon. And then we're going to do curly braces, right? And we are going to message. And we are going to assign that to the value of the message property inside our JavaScript file. So real quickly, we're going to switch over. And we don't have anything defined yet, but we'll say message. We're going to set it equal to an empty string. And I'm going to mention real quickly here that we don't need to add the track property to this. If we were doing this, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe even, remember you'd have to add track into your import statement, then it would be @track message to make a field reactive, meaning re-render the browser when this changes. Now all our fields are reactive. We only need to mess with track, I believe, if we're working with arrays and objects. I'd have to pull up the documentation real quickly to check. But so now we have bound the value in our browser message to the value of message in our JavaScript file. Next, we're going to go back to our HTML. All right. And we're going to put it again in its own div. I don't know why I can't type div today. And we're going to do a Lightning input, which is a base Lightning component. It's part of this framework. And we're going to give it a label of user input and a type of text. All right, let's just refresh our browser. I don't know why my you know what I'm going to do real quickly? I'm going to put this all inside a Lightning card just to give it a little bit of formatting. Simple events. delete that from there. Lightning card. I have no idea why my local development server seems to never be refreshing today unless I actually hit the keyboard. It's not supposed to be that way. But so right now, if we type, hello, nothing happens because we are not listening for the event. So to do that, and we're going to do what's called declaratively, if you read the documents, is we're going to go back to our HTML file, and I'm going to add an onChange event listener. And I'm going to say when onChange happens, go to the JavaScript file and use the handleChange method. All right, so this is different. If you've worked with event listeners anywhere else in JavaScript, you've probably done, set a variable and then document.query selector, get your element, element.add event listener, click, write a function. In the Lightning Web Component, if we do it this way, if we just attach the listener right here with an onChange and set it equal to a method in our JavaScript file, we can skip that step. So now that we've done that, handleChange, let's just go back to our JavaScript file and let's write a handleChange method. Remember, that's just our basic method syntax in JavaScript, the name. And because we are inside a JavaScript class, we're not writing a function. If you saw that before, function, we are writing a method. handleChange, parentheses, curly braces. Event, because we want to get the event object in here. And so for now, we're just going to say console.log. We're just going to print this out to the log. Event target.value. And curly brace. All right, let's see what happens. Refresh it, and all right, looks cool, right? We can see that's all showing up on our log down there. So what we really want to do, though, right, we want to get it over into here. The input from the user is. So when it changes, we need to set message equal to that event target value. And the target is just the event that caused this change. So we're going to say this message equals event target value. Refresh. This is awesome. There we go. We can see it is working. So remember, if we go to our HTML file, we put an onChange event listener. So we are telling this Lightning input field, when this event happens, first we're saying listen for this event. If we don't have that there, it's not even listening. It doesn't care. But we said listen for a change event. And when that change event happens, in the JavaScript file, make use of the method that we called handleChange. Right? And then if we go to our JavaScript file, we just did this very simple. We set this property, the message property, is equal to the value of the event.target.value. Simple as that, right? So, super simple example. Never once in my development career have I ever had a business case of where we want to just display the text back up like that. But I think it's a great example of how events work. Let's also talk about a click event, because a click event is going to be probably one of the other most common ones you'll ever work with. So now what we want, so instead of doing this in real time, the user is they're still going to put their text into this field, into the user input field. But when they click a button, right, it's going to assign, so if we typed in button clicked, nothing would happen. But when we click this button that we're about to add, then that value would appear there. So first, let's go back to our HTML file. And you know what, I'm going to trying to decide if I want to put a div. Let's put it in its own container. And then we're going to do a Lightning button, another base Lightning component, part of the framework. And we are going to give it a label of click me. We do a variant brand, just make it blue. And then we are going to tell it to listen for a click command, or click event. It's listening for that, and then we're just going to define a method in our JavaScript of handleClick. Okay. put another margin there. All right. Oh, because I did not. There we go. Didn't close out my button. All right, so now there we go. So let's go back over to our JavaScript file, simple events, and let's just test our handle click. Handle click. And console.log. Clicked. All right, let's refresh. And we didn't click. There we go. So that's what we want. And you know what? I am remiss in not pointing this out. If you are not familiar with your Chrome developer tools, like on a Mac, it's Control-Alt-I or Control-Option-I will open them. Windows, I think, but it's that is how you access your console down here. Remember the first time I ever started a JavaScript course, and they were like, oh, then go look in the console. And I had no clue. Like, what is the console? How did I even get there? It's a little hidden feature in all of your browsers, for when you're doing front-end development. Impress your friends at parties. They'll think you're a hacker when you open up the console or you do things like that. So my fault for not explaining where that is. But that's not what, back to our events, right? That's not, that button is doing something, but we're going to change our use case, right? So we want the user to be able to type a value in here, but we don't want it to appear up there just yet. So how do we do that, right? We would need to save that value. Then when that button is clicked, then we add it to the input from the user is. So this actually sounds to me like two events. When this changes, we need to do something to save the value. And then when the button is clicked, we need to take that saved value and add it up here to the output field. So I'm going to create a new property, and I'm going to call it user input. And again, I'm just going to set it equal to an empty string. And I'm going to say on my change event now, and so instead of setting it equal to the message property, I'm going to set it equal to this dot user input equals event dot target dot value. All right. So now when we change that, we're not going to see anything. All right. We're still going to see it in our console, but because we're not assigning it to the message property, which is the one that we have, it's the one that we specified in our HTML file, we're not going to see anything up there. Hello. Perfect. That's what we want. Now on click, let's give it the event, and we actually don't need it for this one. What we want to do, so when the button is clicked, we're going to say, hey, when that happens, this dot message is equal to this dot, we don't need to do this actually, to this dot user input, right? And so now we're saying when the click happens, right? So we defined the click event listener in our HTML, and we said when that event happens and we're listening for it, use the handle click method in our JavaScript. And in our JavaScript, we said, hey, set this property equal to the value in this property. So this is a cool test. And now let's click it. There we go. Awesome, it worked. What if we delete it? Awesome. So there we go. It worked. So that is your simple introduction to events, a change event and a click event and a Lightning Web Component. Hope this was helpful. I hope these Lightning Web Component videos are useful to you. They're fun for me to make. I really enjoy front-end development. I always wish I got to do more of it in my real life, so I try to make these videos so I can keep getting skilled up at it. And again, take a second, please, and click like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, everybody. Keep coding, keep practicing, and keep getting better.